In the NASA House, there is a fallout and the Raila factor. What does it portend also for that particular coalition? Who needs whom? And lastly, also, we train our focus on Deputy President William Ruto. Of late, he's been missing in many of the government's functions. Is he a persona non grata in the Jubilee government? We get granular. That is happening today on Punchline. Head over to our Twitter handle. That is a hashtag also Punchline today. So, see you as you get granular on this particular issues of panelists already here. This is Punchline. We begin now. And the list is just quite long as I look at it right here. Siaya, Homa Bay, Kisumu, Busia, West Pokot, Nzoia, Kisila, Laikipia, Nairobi, Vihiga, Kajiado, Samburu, Narok, Nyeri, Kirinyaga, Mombasa, Isiolo, Murang'a, and it goes on and on. These are over 30 county assemblies that have passed the bills so far. And we want to get granular with our panelists. Let me just go direct to them and introduce them. We have Jakoyo, Midiwo, who is a former member of parliament from GEM. Also, we have Professor Aseka, who is a leadership and governance professor at the African International University. We have with us also Richard Onyonka, member of parliament, Kitutu Chache South, and Farah Maalim, who is the deputy chair of the Wiper Party. So we have a very interesting discussion today. As I've mentioned, bills next steps. What are they, right? And the conversation also goes on social media. This is what the bill's next steps will be. Just to give you a snippet of what we're talking about. Yes, MCA have until April 26 to consider the bill. We know that has been streamrolled. And so far we have over 33 county assemblies. At least 24 county assemblies must pass the bill. That has happened. We know that was a threshold. And the 24 counties minimum threshold has been reached. The implication is as articulated in Article 257 of the Constitution. County Assembly speakers will forward the bills to Parliament. And if a draft bill has been approved by a majority of the county assemblies, it shall be introduced in Parliament without delay, right? And also, without delay, in this context means Parliament can proceed with the next step as elaborated in Article 256. This means the shortest time Parliament can take is 90 days, assuming all other processes are crammed into 1 day after the immovable deadline between the first and second reading. So let's just get reactions from our panelists, and we want to begin with you, Richard Onyonka.
Yes.
Your reaction today?
It was actually very interesting, Debarl, because the general mood that we've been handling for the last, I think, 1 year was that BBI was going to be a no-show. BBI was something that people don't even understand, neither do therefore, which means that members of the county assemblies wouldn't understand what it means. But so far, it's gone through. All right. So far, people are aware what the issues are, and Kenyans are not as badly off as we are always assuming that Kenyans will be. I think to a large extent, for me at a personal level, I served under the coalition government when we had the parliamentary system, and I've also served in this system which is going to be presidential, and I can tell you it was absolutely necessary for us to change the system. If you look at what happens in Parliament today, if I have a question and it's tabled in the House, the CS who's supposed to respond to give me answers or my people answers, and some of these questions require immediate attention. What you've been having is we have questions which are placed or tabled in the House. They take 3 months, they take 6 months. Some of those issues are overtaken by events. And if you go back, and you know, Kenyans sometimes we forget very quickly. If you go back to the 2008, 9, 10 period, we would actually, Jakoyo Midiwo was there, Mheshimiwa and Mheshimiwa Farah was there. You ask a minister a question, and particularly the matter is sensitive, that same morning in the afternoon, he comes and answers the question on the floor of the House. So the public is engaged directly on what is going on. The second issue, obviously, Debarl, for me, has been how can you have a country where we hold elections and the leaders of the opposition, after losing those elections, they are actually just made redundant. So then we are being told, and I remember Mheshimiwa Adwale having told us that it's up to you to stay out there and there's nothing you can do, we are in government now. The truth is, if you had these members of the opposition who, that is, you're talking about Mzee Raila, you're talking about Kalonzo, you're talking about Musalia,
yes,
if they had been in Parliament or in the Senate, the discussions would be much more substantive. They would be engaged and they would engage the government substantively. And for me, this is another change that we actually require as a country. And finally, I think generally, if you leave the noise that we've been having about BBI and you leave the propaganda and the alternative fact-checking and the fact-making,
yes,
I think largely the passage is genuine and Kenyans are excited because the money will go to the grassroots.
All right, let's leave it at that.
Yes.
Let's hear from you, Jakoyo. Good evening.
Good evening. First of all, Debarl, let me thank the assemblies for doing us proud and really shutting up the naysayers. I think for the last 2 years, we have been treated to very untidy politics. This process, like we have said here, was canvassed for a long time. People with opinion who had no other motives, ill or otherwise, engaged the eminent persons or the committee that was formed to deal with it. But I think there are scenarios here where people hoped the government and the Kenyans would stay disorganized. Again, you have a very untidy political process where people go to funerals or political rallies and they hurl abuses at their opposites or perceived opposites without addressing the issues that bedevil this country. At least BBI, as understood by MCAs, is attempting to sort this country out and keep sorting it out. One of the big issues really is this issue of devolution. It is, to me, it is very, very important. I do not see how else we can sort out this country without sending money to grassroots. It does so many things. The biggest thing, it denies the thieves from squandering our money at national level. The other thing in that document, which is understood so clearly, and I think all the assemblies understand it, including Baringo. Sure, if you took it back to Baringo today, it would pass. Because there it was just politics which are nothing, which are not of BBI. There are other issues.
So you think maybe also in Baringo, they're feeling we are a pariah county as it is right now?
Exactly. Because I think Baringo needs all of us. Who in Baringo, Debarl, does not need money to sort that mess down there? Some of this is Mother Nature. But only money can sort it out. Money and good governance.
Right.
So
thank you.
Okay.
We'll come back to you. Let's hear from Farah Maalim. Good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah. No, I joined my friends in also congratulating the counties and the MCAs who have passed this bill. I think we've had 10 years to experiment with the old constitution. And 10 years is a long period for us to be able to reflect back and say, where do we think we can improve on? There are a number of places we're going to improve on. And one of them is essentially the accountability of the government. During our time, ministers would come on the floor of the House. And I remember sitting on the chair. And only in one morning, I chased out of the House 8 ministers because they failed to give a satisfactory answer to the Assembly. And I said, look, you have to come back. You're not serious. You must come back with an answer that clearly has the interests of Kenyans at heart. This is a joke. And you're not going to transact any business in this house until you come back with a fitting and a good and a fair answer. And they did that. And in some cases, they have to go with the member of parliament and go to the grassroots and go and correct situations that were bad in the grassroots. Now, who do you hold accountable right now? Look, if you ask me who are the cabinet ministers in this country today, I know Macharia, I know Ukuriatari, I probably know another 2 or 3. I don't know the rest of them. Amina Mohammed.
Why don't you know the rest of them? Maybe
Because
you don't watch news yourself.
No. You see,
You want to tell me they're not really conspicuous?
hang on a minute. They are not conspicuous. You can't see them. They're not on this kind of a media house. When was the last time you watched a minister being grilled in a media house like this one? When was the last time you saw a minister defending the government that he basically is part of the executive?
But the fact that they're not really appearing on
Hang
media
on a minute.
houses doesn't mean they're not really working.
It doesn't work that way, my friend. When you are authority with accountability, they are not accountable to anybody. How do you ask a committee member who is elected from a constituency who doesn't know what goes on in that ministry, and you say, give us an answer on security, give us an answer on infrastructure, give us an answer on health? How does a member of parliament from a constituency who does not have, is not a minister, he does not deal with the technocrats in that ministry, he or she cannot give orders to those technocrats, and is expected to give an answer? Absolutely. The idea is that nothing is going to happen. And that's why we have had the worst, transaction of business at the executive level for the last 8 years. Yes. In the history of this country, I can tell you. So for us to be able to get a constitution that addresses this exhaustively and brings back some of the old things, which worked, and we're very nostalgic about it. I think it's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's hear from Prof. Prof, looking at the current state of play and what turned out to be more than 24, the threshold that was, the hallmark of the whole entire county assembly is passing this particular bill. You think they overplayed their hands? Was that your expectation as well?
Debarl, that was my expectation because of the packaging.
The packages?
Packaging.
The packaging?
Of the BBI. It embodied certain goodies which will make anybody to look a fool to throw them overboard. Nevertheless, as much as we appreciate this initiative that came out of a mutual agreement between two leaders commanding a very big followership behind them, it is important to raise certain questions. And I hope these questions can be picked up at the level of discussion in Parliament, because I don't think rigorous discussion went on at the MCA level. So at Parliament, there is intellectual rigor and there is political profundity that is expected to handle issues pertaining to BBI. And let me just point out a number.
Okay.
Number one is that the ideal way would have been for the weaknesses and strengths, the gaps in the Constitution being identified through an open discussion in what would be a delegates conference that would tease out in a very objective way to show us what works and what doesn't work, so that there is generated a consensus at that level, but we missed that particular phenomenon. Secondly, you notice, as expected, that without serious political reflection, without serious philosophical engagement, a document such as BBI is bound to regurgitate the aspirations which are already contained in the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And so I expect that then the National Assembly should be able to go beyond the level at which we are to rigorously engage these issues beyond mere aspirations by giving us a transformative governance framework, an architecture that can be used to get rid of some of the idiotic practices that we see. And therefore, we are in a country that has a seriously eroded ethical terrain to the extent that one questions the public morality of this country. You can see it at every level. And we are looking forward for a blueprint that can guide us to recollect ourselves and begin building a nation based on certain principles. Because I think on the level of principles, we have gone so down. And if you just watch the nature of the politics, we want people to address us. What do we do with these guys who have lack of restraint and they're abusing each other? We need a new public morality. We need what I can call an ethical motif.
Ethical motif.
Spelled out, yes.
Right. Good point to just rest it a bit. I'll pick it up with you, Prof. But as also this bill is coming to Parliament, we see there are still some kinks that needs to be ironed out. First of all, especially with the JLAC and the CIOC as far as the referendum is concerned, because they don't see eye to eye. There's a lot of challenges also ahead as far as also the courts are concerned, because we know we have consolidated petitions as well, 17 of them, and I think Third Way Alliance just pulled out the other day. These are some of the challenges that we have. We know IBC as well. There's still, you know, a Gordian knot that needs to be broken there as it is. Let me just come to you, Richard Onyonka. In Parliament, what do we expect, right, with the CIOC and the JLAC?
I don't think it is the issues of contradiction exist only in those two. I'll give you an example. Another one that we are looking at. I want to tell you that there are members of Parliament who have the capacity and the capability of discussing and engaging this new dispensation we are looking at, because we are not averse, we are not strangers to what is happening to this country. We are actually reducing our country to a level where many of us are worried. And the example I wanted to use with you is even when we have the 35% coming in, and as the new amount, the amounts which are going to be allocated by the revenue allocation and is going, what is going to go down to the counties and everything. You remember there is a section where it says that the amount that is actually going to be shared out to the wards is only going to be 5% out of the total figure. Some of us are saying that cannot be. Already governors have got 15%, which they already have, which they have been using, which is not following the functions. The money comes and they put it on a one-line item, and that money remains in the governor's office, and it is governor who then decides. So those areas where they did not vote for the governor, he may not care. So we are going to say, number one, we want the Ward Development Fund to be shaped and modeled under the CDF, because CDF has actually done well because we have transformed it, it has changed, and we are held accountable as members of Parliament. And the amount of money that should go to every ward should be substantive enough to actually change the lives of the very poor people and change the lives of our mothers, our sisters, and our brothers at the village level, and that money must trickle down to the grassroots. That is point number one. Point number two, the other bigger substantive issues. We have committees in the House. We have in that Parliament, even when some of us may not be displaying a respectable image and a public image in terms of who we are, we have substantive lawyers, we have accountants, we have people who've been to school properly. What I would expect the Kenyan public to expect is that when the debate will start on the BBI, that we will be discussing it as we are convincing the public that this was actually a necessary development which should take place in our country, and this is geared towards taking Kenya to the next level. And it's not just going to be the normal noise where people come and keep on using alternative facts and discussing all these other issues which are not relevant to the Kenyan person.
Fantastic. Let's hear from Jakoyo, Midiwo.
Yeah, but I want to disagree with Onyonka, not a bit, a lot. No, the MCAs in whose wards these monies will go have already unanimously, more or less, supported the arrangement in the bill. It was not without thought that we said in the 2010 Constitution that no matter what shenanigans Parliament does, it is a fait accompli. It was not without. So it doesn't matter, JLAC or whichever committee or the whole Parliament, they can't reject this bill. So that it is wrong to begin to tell people that the money is not enough, that the governor already has this. The governor and the MCAs come from the same county. The money the governor has, the money the MCA has, is all in the same county. Therefore, you will soon now get another lot that want to be governor in Parliament, who will want to say, who will want to talk about the reverse of that argument Mheshimiwa is bringing. The bottom line is, it is the people's will. Extensive public participation in the counties. I had my good professor here saying that the level of debate wasn't. I've been following. In fact, some of them, some of the MCAs, they reasoned better than many MPs I was in Parliament with. So I think the way this thing is smooth, let us not give Parliament a chance to imagine things that are unconstitutional.
Thank you.
Because immediately this thing comes to Parliament, you will see MPs who have not read and understood the Constitution begin to confuse the country. You know, the problem in JLAC and this CIOC committees, I understand it. It is the problem in Jubilee government. And why do I say so? The imagination on one side of the Jubilee divide was that they had more MPs. And it is true, in all these committees, one side has more MPs. They're controlling more MPs. So they are playing their street politics in Parliament. And this was taken care of in 2010. They will not have a chance. This is the people's initiative. It's going to be easy. For me, who is a supporter and a coordinator, I am celebrating.
Fantastic. Let's hear from Farah Maalim.
You know, constitutional amendments are very broad and very general. Constitution is supposed to be flexible in the sense that you don't indicate everything in the constitutional provision. The Constitution will give certain parameters and say this is what it is. We will have to have laws that are going to operationalize the Constitution. And those are now the laws that operationalize that provision of the Constitution itself. So we're still going to have some acts that are going to define exactly how all these things are going to be administered. So it's at this stage right now, I don't see any need why there should be debates on areas that essentially are going to come before the Parliament itself. Because those pieces of legislations which are going to operationalize will definitely be done by also the drafting team in Parliament itself. So it's just not going to be the Constitution alone, no. You have to operationalize those provisions of the Constitution itself, define it further. And that will still come again for debate from the floor of the House, provided it conforms to the broad outlines of that provision in the Constitution. Now, the other thing I want to say is that, look, everything is not fine. There's no question about that. I mean, somebody will tell you, we don't even have money today. As it is right now, the country is broke, which is true. We keep on raising the debt ceiling, and it's right now unmanageable. At the same time, we've gone ahead and given 35% of the ordinary revenue, the last audited ordinary revenue, to be divided between the counties. These are temporary features of any country that are going to be overcome. You cannot hold a piece of legislation or a constitutional amendment that essentially serves the best interest of the people because there are no resources. The resources will come. I remember in the 7th Parliament, in 1992, when we came in December, 1993, the country was broke. 200 billion. We had, and our budget was only 200 billion. And then, of course, this team came, Mudavadi, and I must give a lot of credit to Mudavadi on that. When he came, he was there as the Minister for Finance at that time, and did a fantastic job, because we had a problem with a pariah who had been literally chased away by World Bank, IMF, and everybody, all the international community, the donor community, because of the human rights violations, the democratization process that essentially, after the Cold War,
yes,
the global and the major powers, the Americans and the West, had to focus on human rights and democracy, which we did not do very well at that time. But we came out of that.
Yes.
I remember our shilling was transacting at 80. And in a matter of 2 years, transacting at 80, in a matter of 2 years, it came down to 40. We actually had to release dollars into the market to create a supply, so that we can our products can become competitive in the regional markets.
Thank you.
So basically, economy is something that can be recovered very well if you get the right people in place.
Fantastic. Such a second, we need to take a short break right now. Then when we come back, we'll circle back with Professor Aseka on that as well, and wind up on the BBI and get reactions also from Governor today. Governors, what has been happening down in the counties. And still, we have quite a lot to cover, looking at the fallout of Nasser and the Raila factor, who needs whom as far as their political capital is concerned. That is a sacred, should I say the trio, right, the sacred troika, do they need Raila, or Raila needs them? And what does it portend for the political capital of Raila as well? Don't go away. Remember, Punchline is a hashtag we're using this evening. I can see lots of your reactions, and I shall be also sampling that on the other